Okay, so let's unpack this scenario. You've just landed in Hong Kong, right? That wave of humidity hits you, the city's just electric.
Absolutely. It's an assault on the senses in the best way,
But, sooner or later, reality bites, you need groceries, and maybe, just maybe, you're craving a taste of home amidst all this newness.
especially if you're there for a while,
Hmm,
perhaps for business,
yeah.
trying to settle in.
Exactly. Like maybe you've used a service like moveandstay.com. They've been helping folks find places across Asia for what, over 25 years now? Finding that base, whether it's for a week or a few months.
And it's funny how something so basic like getting food
Yeah.
suddenly becomes this window into the local culture. It's not just stocking the fridge.
Totally. And that's really our focus for this deep dive.
hmm
Cracking the code of grocery shopping in Hong Kong using the really practical advice from moveandstay.com.
Their guide seems pretty comprehensive.
It really is. It covers the wet markets, the supermarkets, chatting with vendors, even the best times to go, respecting the local ways.
And thinking about why this is useful for you listening, maybe someone who's using moveandstay.com to get settled, understanding where and how to buy food is, well, it's fundamental to feeling grounded, isn't it?
It really is. So our mission today is basically to turn what could feel like a really overwhelming chore in a new city
Yeah, it can be intimidating.
into something more like an adventure. We want you to feel confident walking into any Hong Kong market, find what you need, and actually, enjoy it. Maybe even find some cool new things.
So the big question is, where do you even begin?
Hmm.
The moveandstay.com guide highlights basically two main paths:
Right.
the traditional wet markets and then the more familiar supermarkets.
Hmm.
Shall we tackle the wet markets first? They sound fascinating.
Yeah, let's do it. The article paints this amazing picture, definitely not your average Tesco or Walmart. It describes it as a maze.
A maze, yeah.
Stalls packed together, fresh produce, seafood literally swimming in tanks, butchers chopping away, then dried goods, tofu. It sounds intense, a real dive into local life.
It absolutely is an immersion. And that intensity the article mentions, that potential overwhelm, it's actually part of the unique charm.
Right.
It's the colors, the smells, the noise. It's a whole sensory thing, like Hong Kong itself, really.
Okay, so you're there surrounded by all this energy. How do you actually pick out the good stuff? The moveandstay.com guide has some, well, really practical tips.
Go on.
For fruit and veg, look for vibrant colors. That usually means fresh, especially the local stuff, and obviously avoid anything looking a bit sad or wilted.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Basic stuff, but easy to forget when you're flustered. And for seafood.
Ah, yeah, the tip about the eye is clear and bright, not cloudy. That's a big one.
Universal sign of freshness, that.
And the smell, too, right?
Exactly. It should smell like the sea, clean and maybe a bit
Mm.
salty, not, overly fishy. Use your senses.
It's all about paying attention.
And the guide really pushes this point. Don't hesitate to ask the vendors. Ask for their advice. Oh, definitely. They know their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They know what came in when was particularly good that day. They're like, the guardians of freshness.
Haha, yeah. Guardians of Freshness. I like that. They're a resource.
A huge resource.
Something else I found interesting was the emphasis on seasonal ingredients. The moveandstay.com article says it's not just about better flavor.
No, it's smarter shopping, too.
Right. It can actually save you money.
And think about it from the perspective of someone settling in, maybe through moveandstay.com. Eating seasonally connects you directly to Hong Kong's rhythm.
How so?
Well, when things are in season, they're just better, flavor-wise, nutrient-wise. And, like the guide says, you're often backing local farmers, cutting down on food miles.
Yeah.
Think lixies in summer. They're everywhere. They're amazing. And they taste like Hong Kong summer.
That's a great way to look at it, tapping into the local cycle. And it's not just about buying stuff, is it? The article talks about wet markets as social places.
Oh, absolutely. They're community hubs. You get a chance to actually talk to the people growing or sourcing your food. And that little chat can lead anywhere. Cooking tips, finding out about some weird or wonderful local specialty you'd never normally try. It builds a sense of connection, which is so important when you're new somewhere.
Okay, so wet markets are this, immersive, maybe slightly chaotic, but rewarding experience. But let's be real, sometimes you just need convenience.
Exactly. Quick and easy. That's where supermarkets step in.
And the moveandstay.com guide presents them as that handy alternative, especially if you need specific international brands or, prepackaged stuff.
Supermarkets definitely have that going for them. Predictability, ease, the layout, more or less. You can be faster if you've got a list and you're rushing.
And for someone just arrived, maybe feeling a bit lost.
Seeing those familiar logos from home can be weirdly comforting, can it?
Totally. The article specifically says to look for the international or imported aisles. That's gold for finding, I don't know, your favorite British tea or American cereal.
Definitely a good tip, but it also gives a heads up, right?
Yeah, that the brands might not be exactly the same ones, and imported stuff will probably cost more.
Yeah.
It mentions City Super specifically as a good place to start for that wider international range.
Yeah, CD Super, maybe some of the bigger Park Shop or Welcome stores in certain areas tend to cater more to expats, so they'll likely have more imports.
But the moveandstay.com guide still says, shop smart, compare prices, check the quality.
Always good advice. Budgeting matters, especially if you're setting up a new home base.
So, practical tips, check the sell-by dates, obviously, but also compare unit prices, price per kilo, that sort of thing. Helps you see the real value.
Yeah, that's crucial. Don't just grab the first one you see. And I like the mention of checking online reviews for brands too.
Oh, yeah, that's very 21st century, isn't it? See what other shoppers think.
It is.
Uh-huh.
But equally important, the guide says don't just stick to the imports, explore the local products in the supermarket too.
Right, because they're often fresher and cheaper.
Exactly. The guide encourages checking out the local veg, fruit, sauces, snacks. It's a lower stakes way to try local flavors compared to maybe the wet market initially.
And it makes that crucial point about labels often being in both English and Chinese. Super helpful.
Essential for knowing what you're actually buying, ingredients, nutrition, all that. And like the guide hints, you might find your new favorite thing just by trying a local brand. A hidden gem.
Okay, so whether you're in a noisy wet market or a quieter local shop, the moveandstay.com guide really hammers home the idea of engaging with the vendors. It's more than just handing over cash.
Absolutely. Building even a small relationship, a bit of rapport, can make a difference. The guide mentions regulars often getting pointed towards the best stuff, maybe even slightly better prices.
A friendly word goes a long way.
It really does.
I liked the tip about just learning names or making small talk, even just, wow, busy today. It makes it human.
Exactly. And then there's the cooking advice. The article calls it a free cooking lesson.
Which is brilliant because these vendors, they really know their ingredients, don't they?
Oh, massively. How to cook it, what goes well with it, maybe even a family secret recipe if you're lucky. It's an amazing, often untapped resource.
Especially in the wet markets, right? That's where you find the really unique local stuff. The moveandstay.com article gives examples like dried seafood
Right, or Chinese sausage.
and tofu pudding. And for each one, there's a little vendor tip, like needing to soak the dried seafood first.
Or steaming the sausage before you slice it. Little nuggets of gold, that kind of info. Things you wouldn't just guess.
Totally. Okay, so we know where to go, roughly who to talk to. What about when to go? Timing. The moveandstay.com guide actually has a whole section on this.
Yeah, and timing can really change the experience, especially for wet markets.
So what's the verdict?
The guide suggests aiming for between, say, 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. That's peak freshness, peak selection.
Makes sense. Everything's just arrived, laid out nicely. But I bet it's packed then.
Oh, yeah. Lunchtime and weekends are flagged as potentially manic. Very crowded.
Okay, so if crowds aren't your thing.
Weekday afternoons are suggested as quieter, but the trade-off might be less choice, maybe things picked over a bit.
Right. And then there's the bargain hunter option, evenings after 6 p.m.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Vendors might be looking to shift remaining stock, so discounts are possible.
But there's a catch.
Yeah, the moveandstay.com guide adds a note of caution. Check the quality carefully late in the day. Make sure it's still genuinely fresh.
Gotcha. So, quick summary. Mornings, best stuff, busiest. Evenings, potential deals, check quality. Midday weekends, avoid if you hate crowds.
Pretty much nails it.
Now, this next tip from the article really jumped out at me. Tasting before you buy.
Ah, yes. This is a big perk of the wet markets, especially for fruit.
Really? They just let you try stuff.
Often, yes. The guide says vendors will frequently offer you a slice of mango or whatever, so you know it's good and ripe.
That's fantastic. Like built-in quality assurance. The article says it's less common for vegetables, but maybe worth asking politely.
Doesn't hurt to ask. And it even mentions some supermarkets like Welcome, having a decent fruit selection where sampling might happen, though maybe less common than in a wet market.
And over time, the guide suggests tasting helps you just know what good, fresh, ripe stuff tastes like in Hong Kong. You develop your own expertise.
Exactly. You calibrate your palate.
And there's a social element too, isn't there? The moveandstay.com guide suggests that a vendor offering a sample shows confidence.
Right, confidence in their product.
And accepting it helps build that rapport we talked about. Could lead to better service, maybe even better prices later.
It's all part of that friendly exchange, showing appreciation.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. For people new to Hong Kong, maybe missing specific ingredients from back home, this is a big one. The moveandstay.com guide has some comforting advice here.
Yes, it tackles that common expat dilemma. First stop, as we said, those international aisles in bigger supermarkets, especially in areas with lots of expats, the kind of areas moveandstay.com might help people find places in.
Good to know they exist, even if, the brand of ketchup isn't quite right or it costs a bit more.
Exactly. But what if you just can't find that vital ingredient?
Then, the article says, get creative. Look for local substitutes.
And this is where talking to vendors is brilliant again. They might know the perfect local swap. The moveandstay.com guide gives that great example, using sour cream and plain yogurt instead of creme fraiche.
That's such a practical tip. Genius.
That kind of local knowledge is invaluable.
And for the really niche stuff.
The article points towards specialty stores, organic shops, health food places, stores focusing on, say, Japanese or Korean food.
But with a warning.
Yeah, a heads up that they can be pricier. Good for emergencies or specific cravings, maybe.
Makes sense. And I love the final tip in that section. Keep a notebook or use your phone to jot down substitutes you discover, like building your own Hong Kong food cheat sheet.
A really practical idea as you navigate the food scene and settle in.
Okay, nearly there. You're in the market, finding your stuff. What about the unwritten rules? Cultural etiquette. The moveandstay.com guide covers this too, which is so important.
Crucial for a smooth experience and just being respectful, right? The guide mentions simple things like not overly handling the produce.
Yeah, don't poke everything.
Exactly. And be mindful of cues, personal space, just general awareness.
And interacting with vendors, politeness goes a long way.
Absolutely. The article stresses a smile, trying basic Cantonese greetings, ni hoo, goi. Even if it's not perfect, the effort counts.
Oh, and I liked that anecdote in the guide, reminding a vendor you bought from them before. Apparently saying, hey, it's me again, can sometimes get you better treatment.
Haha, yeah. Building that recognition factor, it can help. Then there's bargaining.
Right. Wet markets, yes. Supermarkets, no.
Generally, yes. Wet markets, it's often expected, or at least possible. Supermarkets, fixed prices.
And the moveandstay.com guides advice on bargaining.
Be polite. Be friendly. Don't start ridiculously low. Know when to stop. It frames it less as a battle, more as a social dance. A social dance. I like that. It's not about winning. It's about the interaction. The guide's quick summary is good too. Watch others. Be reasonable. Be polite. Know when to walk away or agree.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground on grocery shopping in Hong Kong, really leaning on those insights from moveandstay.com and, the folks who've been helping people navigate Asia for over 25 years.
We have. From the buzz of the wet markets to the convenience of supermarkets.
Yeah, how to find fresh stuff, where to look for those tastes of home, even how to try a bit of polite bargaining.
And crucially, the importance of actually talking to people, the vendors, timing your trips, and just being aware of local customs.
So hopefully with these tips drawn from that moveandstay.com guide, what might seem like a challenge
Especially when you're busy settling in, maybe finding a place through moveandstay.com.
can actually become, a successful and even enjoyable part of your Hong Kong life. Culturally enriching, even.
Definitely. It connects you to the place in a very real way.
Absolutely. So on that note, maybe a final thought for you listening. Next time you go for groceries in Hong Kong, why not deliberately pick one local ingredient you've never tried before? Something that looks interesting.
Ooh, a challenge.
Yeah. And maybe even use that moveandstay.com tip. Ask the vendor their favorite way to cook it. You just never know what amazing new dish or connection you might discover. It's a great way to really taste Hong Kong.